Hello, and welcome to Mastering Ansible, a complete guide to configuration management and orchestration using Ansible. I'm Chris, and I'm going to be your instructor for this course. Throughout this course, not only are we going to teach you how to use Ansible for basic configuration management and orchestration tasks, we're also going to help you build a workflow for how to use Ansible to manage infrastructure at scale using infrastructure as code principles. We've divided this course into 6 sections. We'll start out with some basic preparation, talking about the environment and how to get it set up. We'll then move on to foundational principles of Ansible, such as what are tasks and how do you put them together into plays and playbooks and execute them. For the bulk of the content in the course, we're going to use a quote by Kent Beck as our guiding principle, and that quote is, "Make it work, make it right, make it fast." So for the 3 sections in the middle of the course, we're going to first focus on getting our environment stood up and working using Ansible playbooks and modules. We'll then move on to refactoring that environment and making it more modular and supportable using roles and variables. And finally, we'll wrap up with trying to extract more speed out of our Ansible setup and look for ways that we can get optimization and performance increases by tweaking our Ansible setup. Finally, in the course, we'll spend some time on troubleshooting tips and techniques and ways that you can test and validate your Ansible code. As we're going along this process, I want you to know that this is a journey. In this course, we're not just going to dive into individual modules down in deep. I'm not going to pull up the docs and show you feature by feature all of the contents of Ansible. The point here is really to help you along a journey of starting from scratch and building layer by layer. How do you use Ansible to get a real-world environment stood up and then supported and maintained? So all of this is drawing on my own experience of using Ansible at scale in a big environment. So not only are we going to help you configure that environment, but we're going to give you the artifacts that you need to then maintain and support it using playbooks in an orchestration style workflow. We expect that you have some systems administration background to take this course, although it's not strictly required. The focus of the course is really on the Ansible topics and how to take those concepts and implement them using the Ansible tool. So although I'm going to teach you how to use the Ansible apt module to install packages, for instance, I expect that you already have some experience with installing packages via apt via the command line already. So with that, I'm excited about this course. I hope you are too. Let's get started on our journey together into the exciting world of Before we dive into actually learning about Ansible, I'd like to spend just one lecture talking about some of the big picture principles about where Ansible fits in to the ecosystem and kind of what it's offering you as an operations engineer or as a software developer, let's say. So Ansible falls into a broad category of tools that I would consider infrastructure automation. And really that's how do we get this software, this infrastructure stood up in a way repeatably, reliably, using some tooling that we can commit to a repository and have to use later. So the purpose of automation in general, if you think about it, is really to reduce the time and the risk that's associated with we take something that we would do manually and then we put it in some sort of script or code, and that way we have something that we can go back to that codifies the change that we want to make, right? And so code itself really doesn't inherently make things better, but having it in code gives you the opportunity to take action that often results in improving the quality of the change that you're about to make. So if you think about what you get just from putting something into code, you reduce the opportunity for some person to make an error, right? Because instead of typing in the same change over and over again, you don't have typos because you know that this script is the same as where it was last time. You have that consistency that you probably don't have when a human is typing. You also get more opportunity to find those errors. So now that you have it in code, you can commit it to a repo and you can run tests against it. You can put it in your peer review tool. You could have other colleagues look at it. You can run static analysis. All those types of things you get if you put it in code that you don't get if it's just directly being injected into a system where the change is being made live. You get some confidence that you're making that same change everywhere, and that kind of falls out from having it in code and executing the code as opposed to kind of remembering the changes or having to do it manually. And you also get some built-in auditing. So you can see what has been done in the past, how has this changed, who's done what where. It's a little bit easier to do when you have a record of who made the change built into your version control system. So that's all kind of automation or just making changes via code. But that can come in a variety of forms, right? You might have a bash script or a Python script, a Perl script, something like that, some macros. So what's special about configuration management tools like Ansible, Puppet, and Chef compared to all these other scripting or code libraries that you might use? And in my mind, it's because configuration management provides you with some abstractions that help you do that better, right? And I say do that being make changes to your infrastructure with confidence. So you get things like cross-platform implementations where kind of the nitty-gritty details are hidden for you. You get templating and variables and other control structures for applying logic to the changes you need to make. It gives you sort of a framework for building modular code that you can reuse that's encapsulated well. And in the end, though, I think one of the biggest things you get out of it is this concept of idempotence, which is if you need to make a change to an environment, you can execute something, and if it's idempotent, you can execute it again, and nothing changes in that second run. So the first time you run something, it takes you from whatever the current state is to the end desired state, but then you can rerun it and trust that no other actions will take place. And so you get safety out of this ability to codify your changes in sort of an end declarative state as opposed to always execute these same actions over and over again. And so having idempotence built into these tools is really empowering you to then have confidence that you can run them very often. And it's in that repeated running that you then build up confidence in the state of your infrastructure in the end. And that's really the ultimate goal here. That's why we're investing all this energy in these tools. It's to have confidence in our infrastructure, that we can make changes to it, and that it is configured the way that we think it is. So that's what configuration management gives you, and Ansible is one of the tools in that category. But in addition to configuration management, there's also kind of a corollary problem of orchestration. And there's a little bit of a difference in my mind between these two tools, even though some people might use these terms interchangeably. Configuration management is really about taking a particular host and getting it into its end desired state. So we don't necessarily know where it is now, but we can declare the desired end state, and a config management tool is really good about taking you from where you are to where you want to go. There's still this question, though, of how do you do that across many hosts, right? And if you think about a complex architecture, there may be web hosts and database hosts and load balancers, and the order through which you apply the changes to those different tiers really matters. So configuration management tool is really focused on the contents of a single server, but somebody has to be in charge of making sure that before you update your web servers, you make sure your database schema is applied first, those types of changes. And that's really the domain of the orchestration tool. And it's not either or, but when you're changing your infrastructure and making these changes, you really need both. And the great thing is Ansible gives you primitives to do both. So Ansible, because it's procedural and ordered, will allow you to do orchestration and perform tasks in the order that you want it to, but also gives you the configuration management modules that say, I need to take resources on this server and make them look more like this. So at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here is really, there's these two classes of things, these two classes of problems that we need to do inside of the data center, and Ansible can help us solve both. So with that, we're going to dive in and learn about how Ansible can help us do configuration management and orchestration inside of our application environment.